Can you give your pet ferret coronavirus? Can your pet ferret give you coronavirus? Just how much of a threat is coronavirus to your family and your ferrets? And what makes ferrets so different from dogs and cats? Answers to these and other questions coming up next. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bruce Bowersfeld, DVM. Everyone calls me Dr. B. I'm a veterinarian in private practice, Southern California. This channel is about the best tips, tricks, and training available today to keep your pet healthy, give him a long and pain-free life, and make you worry-free. Well, what triggered my interest in this ferret potential danger is a news release from the Danish government this last week. The Danish government will cull nearly 20 million mink in the northern province of Jutland over fears of a mutated coronavirus threatening not only the citizens of Denmark, but the rest of the world. Its announcement was that it was culling 12, it's such a big number, I don't even want to say it. It was culling the entire nation mink herd. The entire nation mink herd. Mink farming is big. It's a billion-dollar industry, and the Netherlands announced that they were culling nearly 20 million mink, the largest population in the world, to stop the spread of coronavirus. And my immediate reaction is, well, what about our ferrets? Coronavirus can infect this species. The government in the Netherlands is trying to prevent that. I strongly believe that our pet ferrets are at an extreme risk for getting infections of coronavirus from us. They're at a risk for getting the common, for getting influenza and colds. Well documented that they can get human influenza virus as well as colds. So their receptors are very, very similar to people in that regard. So, question of the day, do you own a ferret? Have you ever owned a ferret? Would you like to own a ferret? If you have any ferret experiences, please share them with me either in the comments or below or in the chat feed right now. I love to hear from you. I try to respond to all comments as soon as I see them. Okay, so I believe there's an extreme risk of our ferrets in getting coronaviruses and then them giving it back to some beloved member of the family. Because they're first cousins of the mink, because they have these same ACE2 receptors, and because they've known to be susceptible, I'm worried. Accurate numbers are not available that I could find, but they're estimated to be approximately 800,000 ferrets, pet ferrets, in the United States living side by side with us, their companions. Once upon a time, we were blessed by a ferret. His little name was Coda. We had him for about 11 years. He was the cutest little thing. He was kind of mischievous. He liked to steal things. And I would come home from the office, from the clinic, take off my tie, forgive me for saying this, but set it down kind of randomly, and then relax and do things around the house with my wife. I have a lot of ties, and I wouldn't pay too much attention to where the ties were going. And lo and behold, once a month or so, I would find a pile of my ties squirreled away in the corner of a room in a little spot in his den where he'd pick them up and move them down. They like to steal things and hide things, and he was really cute at that time. So, in my opinion, they make great pets. In my opinion, the ferrets pose the greatest risk of all our pet companions in getting the virus from somebody in the house. And let's face it, ferrets are not outside. If you put one loose in the backyard, he is not going to stay there very long. I don't care what kind of fence you got. They're pretty, and they're going to get out. So, there have been many cases of this very scenario already documented. And the disaster that's occurring in the mink farms around the world critically acclaimed the lives of nearly 20 million 20 million mink are being wiped out just because of this very fact that they can get it and maybe transmitting it back to people, which is what we're going to talk about. So the fear is that people are getting infected by mink, and my fear is that people can get reinfected by their ferrets if the ferrets get infected by them, just like what happened in the mink farms themselves. I am not, repeat, I am not worried about mutations. The mutations that occur because you had this large population of mink in this huge environment of coronavirus, and it's replicating in all of those mink. And voila, the likelihood of a mutation becomes astronomically high. One pet ferret that gets sick isn't likely to create any mutations whatsoever, but he could foster the virus. He could be expelling it from his from primarily his respiratory tract, although there are receptors in the intestinal tract, and potentially give it to family members. And that's what we certainly want to prevent. We know that the immune system is different with all these ACE receptors, and I wanted to get a slide up here that shows the susceptibility of coronavirus on a species by species basis. So if you think about over here being almost no risk, no susceptibility, you have birds and horses and pigs and cows. You come up into the middle, dogs maybe. I think there's been a couple goats, and there's probably been 20 different species that have been tested that shown positive. Not that it's replicating and giving them problems, but you see some middle of the road specificity, and then as it progresses down the line, you got golden hamsters, ferrets, and man. And right now, I would almost switch ferrets and man and say that ferrets may be more susceptible to the coronavirus as it exists today than people are. They just haven't been exposed to it up until this big concentration in the mink farms. So, if you own a ferret, be happy. They're great pets. But if you have a family member that's cold, if you have a family member with cold-like symptoms, flu-like symptoms, coronavirus-like symptoms, what are the recommendations for the family? Well, isolation, testing, figure out if you got it. If you got it, self-isolation, hopefully get better and don't need to go to the hospital. Protect the other members of the family. To protect the other members of the family, lost my prop. To protect the other members of the family, everybody's wearing a mask, including the sick person. While everybody's in the room, everybody's wearing the mask, right? So the problem is trying to put a mask on your ferret isn't going to work. So they're best protected by you protecting them and the like. And we're going to do that probably by isolating them. You certainly don't want to be in the same room as the sick person. You probably want to get them in a room that's isolated for this period where somebody's sick in the house. Ventilation is something I think that's overlooked. You know, the World Health Organization recommends isolating dogs and cats should probably not be in the same environment as the sick person, and with minimal contact on that basis. But with ferrets, with its high susceptibility of aerosol transmission, keeping them in a well ventilated room. Ferrets like it cooler, so if the window of the room is open, that would be good. Make sure that if there's air conditioning vents, they're coming in and it's not a return. You don't want, and that would be true for the family member that's ill. You know, air conditioning systems all have returns. The air, that's how it's cycled. Most rooms have the AC or heating HVAC vents, and the returns are in the hallways or somewhere else. But if you're in the room with a return, you probably should shut off the return, shut off the stuff, or move the sick person out of that, because you don't want to be sucking that air into the rest of the environment. I hope that makes sense. So Putting a mask on a ferret, not very effective, but ventilation and good sanitary procedures, and everybody hopefully will be perfectly happy and healthy. That's my best advice for in times like these. It's better to err on the side of caution and taking lots of precautions than it is to be overconfident, because overconfidence and ignoring the situation is very, very, very unjustified. So that's all for this segment of today on ferrets. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. I'll be happy to get back to you. If you have questions today, we'll take them live. And thanks for joining me. It's me, Dr. B, signing off. Have a great, happy ferret day. Thanks. Well, that's all for today. If you benefited from today's program, please hit the like button below. For more information about ferrets, mink, and coronavirus, check out these videos here. This channel is about the best tips, tricks, and training available today to keep your pet healthy, give him a long and pain-free life, and make you worry-free.